Good evening, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Carl's Conversations. We're so glad to be back. As you know, we took a few days off and we got away and got some much needed rest and relaxation and even a little rejuvenation, wouldn't you say?
Yes,
so it
much needed.
much needed. So it feels good to be back in the driver's seat. We have a subject matter tonight that should be very interesting for all of us. I think all of us be involved. Tonight, we're going to talk about the election, election 2020. Let's talk about it. There's a lot of things going on, and so we want to talk about it. But just before I do that, just want to let you know, hey, listen, one thing about Carl's Conversations, our motto is a safe place to have difficult conversations. I firmly believe that in all that get an understanding. And even though sometimes in these conversations, we may not leave in agreement, but we can leave with a better understanding. And I think that's one of the reasons why there are so many divisive relationships and divisive things going on in our nation right now. Many of us don't understand. And it's a dangerous thing to speak about things that you don't have understanding about. So we want to be very mindful of that. And so today, yes, we're going to talk politics, but I want to let my audience know that I don't come from a political angle. To be honest with you, I don't know what party my guests belong to, even though I know them. To be quite honest with you, I don't believe I've ever asked them. So there's no prep as far as, me setting them up and want to lean one way or the other. We just want to have a conversation about the things that are going on in our nation and how it will affect the election. All right. So, hey, listen, if you're here with us already, please start a watch party, share, let people know that we are live and we're going to be talking about election 2020. And we want to encourage you. If you have a comment or a question, please list it right there in your comments on your Facebook. And we're going to get to it as soon as we can. As the discussion starts and gets cranked up, I'm sure you'll have an opinion about something. And we don't suspect that you're going to agree with everything. And one thing I want to do tonight, I really want to know where my audience is coming from. So as you greet us, can you please let us know your city and state? And if you're outside of the USA, let us know your city and nation. We want to know where our audience is coming from. So with no further ado, I want to present our panel tonight. We have my favorite son, Davian Armstrong. He's down there in Virginia Beach. And we have my play little brother, Elder Chris Tucker. He is just an all around good dude, many talents, many gifts. And we may have one more panelist that will join us in session Sunday. This has been a tremendously interesting day. We had all kind of things happening. All right. So thank you so much for joining us. Thank you, Davian. Thank you, Chris. So today we're going to talk about election 2020. As you gentlemen know, there are a host of things going on. There is my sister, the beautiful Jessica Armstrong Ashburn. Hey, baby girl, how you doing? And don't y'all be trying to hit on my sister either. Don't nobody be asking me for her number. So we know there's so many things surrounding the election. I mean, it's almost a smorgasbord of where do we even start. But where I do want to start is something very interesting. There's been all kind of talk about voter suppression, voter intimidation. I want to know from what you're seeing, are you feeling like there may be some voter intimidation or an attempt at voter suppression? Chris, we'll start with you. What do you think?
Yeah, I definitely think that it's a little bit of both voter suppression and intimidation. When we look at just the presidential debate, not even the vice presidential debate, but just the presidential debate, where Donald Trump said that people were not voting who were not registered to vote, that male people were selling ballots. All right, that all goes to undermine the integrity of our elections, right? Of a free, fair, and open election. And then just on a local spot, you see where um, various Trump groups are going out to polling places, and they are raising all type of sand at the polling places, trying to intimidate people to get out of line to not vote. And in some cases, they have been successful, where people just was like, I'm not trying to deal with this. I don't want to deal with this, and they leave. Preferably, they do go back and cast their vote, but at first glance, it absolutely looks like voter suppression and intimidation. And then we can't forget Proud Boys and all of those guys who openly said if Donald Trump does not get reelected, then there's going to be trouble, right? All in an attempt to sway people to vote out of fear that this particular outcome is going to happen. So that there's definitely voter suppression, definitely voter intimidation, but we have to make sure that we steel our nerves and go out there and do our civic duty, participate in our democracy.
Well, thank you and welcome, Tia. We appreciate it. You only missed the introduction. We're gonna come back to you in a minute. I'm gonna ask Davian to respond to the question. The question is, there's so many things that we're gonna try to tackle tonight. But the first thing we started on when it comes to the 2020 election is, do you see an attempt at voter suppression and voter intimidation? I just want to get your opinions on it. Davian, what say you, sir?
I agree. Voter suppression, especially with this election, with the nature of this election and the candidates involved, it's here in full force. We've seen it at polling locations. We've seen certain groups, like Christopher said, come there and try to intimidate people. I think at this point, denying voter suppression is just turning a blind eye to it and saying, I don't want to see it. Voter suppression comes in many forms. One way that I've seen it personally happen is with certain states, such as Florida, trying to ban formerly incarcerated individuals from voting. And what's so systematic about that is that there's the factors that lead to people getting incarcerated, minorities especially, and then when they get out of prison and then they're still not able to vote. It's that cyclical nature of trying to put us back in our place and trying to limit us from expressing our rights. So the voter suppression, it's the intimidation through actual laws, and it's the physical intimidations. But once again, I would just encourage anyone to override that, because it is too important to allow that to happen. And I think something very important to see, voter suppression would not be happening if they thought they had the election in the bag. If they thought that it was, just a total win, then this would not be happening. The fact that we're seeing voter suppression in so many wide, varied scales says that they are scared. And this is an act of fear. They're acting out of fear on their end because they do not want people to come out and vote, because they do not want to see what that outcome is. Excuse me.
All right. Well, thank you for that. Ms. Tia, what do you think? Do you think that we're seeing voter suppression and voter intimidation?
Absolutely. I think that one thing that really comes to mind is that we have someone who's the head of our nation who is inciting this. I mean, when you have someone who is the leader of the free world and he himself is not even knowledgeable, I'm convinced that he's not even completely knowledgeable on how voting happens and voting laws. And then you have him who himself has said things to intimidate voters. But when you think about voter intimidation and voter suppression, I think about the fact that we have young people who are so bold right now in their voice. They're a lot more forward with their voice than I know that I've ever been, and even my ancestors have ever been. And so I think we have that on our side. So in that case, I think it won't work. I think that they are, as the term says, ride or die for making a change in this world, that I don't think that it's going to work. The other part of it is, I think we have, when you think about suppression, I think about when Black people didn't have the right to vote, and when a lot of that was going on back in the day. But now we're at a time where I think even our white brothers and sisters are tired. So it's not just Black people. So I think that's where the intimidation piece comes in. But again, I think that it is a tactic, but I don't think it's working. Judging by the numbers, I think by the debate last time, I think they said over 4 million people had already voted early. So I think that those numbers tell you that it's not working. And as someone just said, they're doing it so much now because there is a threat. Trump has fallen behind in the numbers as far as winning or losing, if you will, this election. So the more those numbers decrease or increase, depending on which side you're talking about, it seems like the more you get this voter intimidation and voter suppression. But so yes, in simple terms, yes, I do think it exists, but no, I do not think it's working.
All right, sweetie, what do you think?
Yes, I definitely think that there is voter intimidation and suppression. My thing is this: be it Democratic, Republican, anything. Your vote is your vote, and you are allowed to vote in the way that you choose to do so. Whatever, whatever their platform is and what it is that they're trying to do, you're going to go and vote with that person. Doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to agree 110% with everything that they do. And I said all of that to say, if you believe in your particular candidate or whatever party that you're affiliated with, you should be able to vote in that particular manner and not feel threatened. If you're a Republican, not be threatened by Democrats, and Democrats shouldn't be threatened by Republicans. I think it should be done in a respectable manner. Your vote is your vote, period, point blank. When you get to the point that you have to use manipulative tactics, to me, that speaks volumes. You should not have to threaten anyone. You don't need to make announcements such as stand back, stand by, stand your ground. There should be no type of announcements made such as that. I too agree with what Tia just said. I think the president may not know all of the policies. I don't know all of the policies either, but I'm not in office trying to run, as the commander in chief. And I hope that the United States has learned a lesson by what we have encountered. Again, know that you have somebody that knows what the laws are, have served in some type of capacity, be it in the military, everything that you need to do to be able to run as a successful commander in chief. And I'll be done for the moment.
Got it. Chris, you had something?
Yeah, I just wanted to go back to something that Davian brought up, and that was about, voter suppression and turning a blind eye to it, right? And we have to be clear that turning a blind eye to voter suppression is voter suppression itself. Right? And if we just need examples of what that looks like, seeing states reduce the number of polling locations, right? Especially in Black and brown communities where, we could vote for a particular candidate. So, and to look at that and to say that, that there's no big deal that they closed, 5 or 6 polling places. Well, now these individuals have to travel outside of their precinct to vote in a whole nother precinct, right? So, and how many people can afford to go there? How many people have adequate transportation to get over to this other precinct? Whereas if they had that same polling place there open in that location, right, that they could have walked down the street and been done. So, to echo what Davian said, turning a blind eye to voter suppression is voter suppression in itself.
Amen to that. DJ, you had something to offer?
Yes, this just has me thinking about history, because as I was always taught, history doesn't repeat itself, it rhymes. And I'm hearing a little tune in my head as we're speaking about this now. And if we go back just a couple of weeks, because it's so hard to really remember everything that happens, especially with this administration, because it's one thing after another, and there's just smoke screen after smoke screen. If we look back just a few weeks, the big story was mail-in voting was rigged. Mail-in voting, there was going to be fake ballots that were going to be cast. It was a big issue, so nobody should do mail-in voting. Never mind the fact that that's putting more freedom and opportunity into the American people with their ability to vote. Never mind that, but mail-in voting is bad. Okay, so if mail-in voting is bad, then we have to go to the polls. Now we're ready to go to the polls, and they see that. Now we have not new, just altered and adjusted methods of voter suppression happening to stop people from going to the polls. It makes you think, well, what is your real agenda here? You don't want us to vote from home. You don't want us to vote in person. Do you want us to vote at all, or do you just want a select group of people to vote? And that's the question I will pose here.
Wow, that's a wonderful segue. I wasn't going to go this way, but since we're here, we do have so many options to vote. And Tia, I'm going to start with you on this one. We have so many options. Of course, we have absentee voting by mail. And I do know that every state is different. We all here on this panel are in the state of Virginia. And so there have been some recent changes to our laws. Of course, we can do mail-in absentee voting. We can do in-person early voting. You know, in the previous list of reasons why you had to have to use that type of voting, you don't need them now. Of course, we're in COVID-19, and the key thing is to keep us safe, right? So, and I've even seen Tisha and I, we voted on the first day of early voting, September 18th, and I didn't know this at the time, but we saw several cars pull up who had elderly people who had physical disabilities, and some people were just so scared of COVID, they wasn't getting out that car. And without that option, they may not have voted. What role do you think that the different options in voting, what effect do you think that's having in our election? Is it a positive thing? Are people really going to use it, or do you think it's whatever? Start with you, Tia.
I definitely think it's a positive. I think that we have to take advantage of the times that we are in. COVID is, of course, a monster for us to deal with. However, if anything good was to come out of it, it would be the ability for us to have these different methods of voting. And I know I, for one, I speak a lot. It's funny that you say something about elderly, because I have been speaking a lot about that. Like, reach out to your elderly family members who you know are scared to death of COVID, who you know may not have the knowledge. Because, I mean, we have people who are still 100 years old who live. So let's make sure that they get their absentee ballot if they're not going to go to the polls. We have to do our part, and we have to be diligent in doing our part. And I think that taking advantage, I think it is, you do have voter suppression and you do have voter intimidation, but I think all of these different methods, I think that it would serve us well. I think it would prove to be a win for us if we take advantage of the early voting. I know some people just want to physically go to the polls. I get it. So if you're scared of COVID, go out and do it in early voting. Don't wait for November the 3rd. I want this thing to be decided before November the 3rd. I definitely think that I definitely think it's a positive, and I would hope that people are going to take advantage of the early voting instead of waiting on November the 3rd. All
right, Chris Tucker, what role do you think all the different voting options will play in this election?
I think it's going to play the same amount as normal. I think the only thing that the absentee voting is going to show is that this has been a better option all along, right? We should not have had all of these 1,001 reasons or excuses as to why we needed to do early voting or absentee voting. And I get it. We wanted to make sure that our elections were safe and fair and free from outside interference. I got it. But much like everything else this year, we're being shown that, hey, this has been a viable option. Early voting has been a viable option. And so I agree with Tia that there are those elderly, those disabled people who, can't stand in line on November 3rd for hours just to make sure that their vote is cast. And this is a great benefit for them, those people who have pre-existing conditions, health conditions, right, that can't afford to stand out there in those lines. Going to be a great benefit for them. And hopefully for everybody else, this is just a great time saver in general, where people who were not able to vote in the last election due to age or whatever the case, now have an opportunity to make their voice heard. And I'm very encouraged that so many millions of people have already taken advantage of that already.
It is an amazing thing. Davian, what about you?
I think it's extremely important because when you look at the nature of our society, you almost have to ask, why isn't it an option? I'm 23 years old, and I'm born in the age of immediacy. I want food, I can order it. I need to go somewhere, I can get a car that comes to me if I don't have my own to take me to where I need to go. Amazon, whatever I want, it's at my fingertips. Why is this not the same thing when we have the technology? That's a saying that I always say whenever I run into an issue and I don't understand why something's working. It's, well, we have the technology. We figured this out. People have been voting by mail. People have been doing absentee voting for years. Why are we not utilizing it? I think it's extremely important. I've heard it from so many different people in my life, people in my age group, and from coworkers as well. Just like it was mentioned by my fellow co-host, people with pre-existing conditions, people that have kids that they have to care for and they don't have the time to do so, the elderly. It's an option that allows everybody to still exercise their right to vote from their own comfort. And if going outside of their own comfort is going to limit or end their right to vote, then that shouldn't happen. So I think it's extremely important. I'd say it's a little bit more important as it ever has been, given our current age of time.
Awesome. I tell you what, it's amazing. With all of these options, I really am interested to see the final numbers. I want to see if people who maybe felt like their options were so limited because maybe they did feel a little intimidation, maybe they did feel frustration, maybe they are so afraid of COVID. And I'll tell you what's a trip. I asked this question, a panel I did probably maybe about 6 or 7 weeks ago. And I know that there was a lot of pushback on mail-in voting. And I just want to present that question real quick. I'm gonna come back to you, Tisha. Do you guys feel any differently today than you did maybe 6 weeks ago about the mail-in voting portion? It's an open question. Same, okay. What you have to say, sweetie?
Okay, so talking about mail-in voting, I think right now the president, he presents it as if you can't do mail-in ballots because they're being taken by mail carriers, thrown in rivers, and it causes a whole bunch of confusion. And then on one breath he says that, and then he says, but you can mail it in, it's okay. It's so many distractions that the president communicates. It leaves so much room for error, and people are unclear, they're uncertain, they really don't know what's being communicated, how to go about trusting that, because it changes. My thing is, be consistent. Due to COVID, we have all of these options at this particular time, and I think it's a good thing. And I think we may even want to develop it even more, as long as it can be verified. But it's really crazy. The great lengths that you see people to go through to suppress someone's vote. And my thing is, you should be able to vote, of course, one time, not take a ballot and give the message of saying, we'll see if you can cast your ballot. It's just so much confusion.
Yeah. Once again, we want to thank everybody who's a part of the audience. If you comment, please let us know where you're watching from. We want to see where the audience is coming from. I got notification that Miss Mary Ann Tan is watching, and she's watching from the Philippines. So for all of my panelists, if you didn't know, you just went international. Amen.
Can I say something right
Sure.
quick? I also want to highlight the importance of volunteering when it comes to volunteering at the polls and the registrar's office, because the more diversity we see there, I think that would also make this a better process. And I say that because when it comes to mail-in ballots, if you have that diversity there, you really are taking a gamble, because you don't know if you're suppressing the Democrats or the Republicans or Trump or Biden. Like you wouldn't know, because it would all be tossed up in a gamble. So I think that it's important for us, because I know a few people who have volunteered at the polls. I know someone who has volunteered at the registrar's office. And I think that is the move, because I always say the higher to the top you go, there's no power in being at the low level. Sometimes you have to rise to those positions in order to effect change. And so I commend all of those people who have taken the time to volunteer at the polls and at the registrar's office, because that's where we need to see the diversity the most.
Thank you so much for bringing that up. And I wholeheartedly agree and stand behind that 1000%. We not only need to be voting and encouraging our family and friends to vote, but we also need to be volunteering. If we want to make sure this thing doesn't go right, there has been a call for certain people to go and monitor voting. Now, for all of our audience, I don't want this to sound like an anti-Trump rally, because it's not. If we have people out there who are listening and you disagree, hey, listen, we want to hear from you too. Carl's Conversations is all about being a safe place for difficult conversations. So we don't only take comments of those who agree with us, but even those who disagree. All right. One thing I wanted to talk about was COVID-19, and what effect do you think that that's having on the election? The way that our nation has handled it, the way that maybe your particular state is handling it, the way that it's being handled at your local level. What effect is that having on you as an individual and in your circles of influence? And Davian, I'll start with you and your circles of influence. What are you hearing? What are you feeling about the impact of COVID-19 on the elections?
I would say personally, I have not felt the effects of COVID-19, and I feel very fortunate to have that be the case. Knowing how rampant it is, and yes, I would use that word because 200,000 people have died. I would say I'm not satisfied with how it's been handled. Me and my girlfriend were going tomorrow morning to go early vote, which I was able to do it sooner. And I don't have any fear in my heart or in my mind about going to vote. I'll choose my words carefully and say, let's just hope there's no voter suppression there when I'm going to vote tomorrow. However, I would say that I think that fear is true with a lot of Americans here, and I'd say specifically in Virginia, because that's where I'm from. Where people do feel the fear of COVID. Once again, we have to see. I'm young. I don't have any pre-existing conditions. I don't have any family members that I specifically have to care for, and young ones and the older ones. So I'm an anomaly. I'm put in a different tier. However, for a lot of Americans, a lot of people, that's not the case. Their fears with COVID-19 is heightened because of the lives that they have, and that's perfectly understandable, right? So I think it's important to recognize that fear and not minimize it at the same time. However, even with that, the importance of voting is something that I think surpasses everything. And I'm sure we'll get to that later.
All right. How about you, Mr. Tucker? What do you think? What effect do you think COVID is having on our elections?
I think COVID is having a huge impact, but I think that it's going to be in a positive way. I agree with Brother Davian that we don't like how it's being handled, especially when we see the failure of the federal government to take certain steps sooner. We know that the federal government withheld information from its citizens. in order to project a certain image. And so I think that all of that is coming into play. I think that the voters are thinking about that when they cast their vote. Also thinking about how certain people within the federal government have now contracted coronavirus and having to spend time in the hospital with just blatant failure to adhere to CDC guidelines, basic CDC guidelines of wearing a mask and maintaining social distance. So I think that voters are thinking about this as they go to the polls, and I think that that's probably evident in the 4 million plus people that have already cast their vote.
Wow. Tia, what do you think?
I too think that is important. I think it's going to be the main tipping point for this election, between that and the social injustice, because the social injustice definitely impacted across color lines. But as far as COVID-19, it was mishandled. And let me just first start by saying I don't vote along party lines. I mean, I was raised in a Democratic household, but since I've become older and realized the history of the parties, I don't vote party line. I vote intelligently, and I vote based on my own knowledge, my own research, and just plain old this election common sense. Like, to me, this is the easiest election I think I've ever voted in. It's just a no-brainer. And one thing that stood out to me is when the question was posed on to Mike Pence at the vice president, the VP debate, when they asked him about how do they expect for the country to follow the CDC guidelines when it appeared that they didn't even follow it at the White House during their gatherings. And so for the answer that came back was one that I think that the people who have personally dealt with COVID-19, I think that they looked at that and said, judging by the commentary afterwards, they had the people who were talking about what their experience was after the debate and which way they would be voting. And one of the people said that was the deciding factor for them because they had been personally affected by COVID-19, and it just seemed really insensitive. So I definitely think it's going to be important from that, and then the fact that we have a narcissist that sits in the White House. And I would say that regardless of what face you put on that shoulder, I don't care who it is. I mean, just the words coming out of the mouth, the insensitivities when it comes to COVID, to him catching COVID, and all of the comments that followed after that, that was insensitive to anyone who's dealt with it. Like, you can get through it. You just hang on, and whatever other word that he used that was just straight, blatant insensitive. And so I think with that, as they say, the old people say, you're digging your own grave. I mean, just the more he talks, the deeper that grave just gets dug. So people get angry when Trump speaks, and I rejoice. Because I feel like, keep talking, just keep on talking. I just think the louder you talk, just the more ignorance that pours out, and the more the numbers sway in our direction. So I'm all for it.
Well, Tia, since you have shined the light on that big pink elephant that's in the room, I want to open that up. Why everybody smiling? Y'all know where I'm going with this, right? Look, audience.
No, I think that we just all satisfied with Tia's answer.
Okay, that's what it is. I don't want nobody to think I set this up, right? So she's exposed the pink elephant. Now, this is crazy, right? With our president, many of us have been really dismayed. It's like the White House appears just to be obtuse when it comes to the mask wearing, and almost like flaunting, so-called freedom not to wear a mask. I know that people feel differently about it, but every medical professional that I've talked to, and I work in the healthcare arena, every medical professional that I've talked to, without fail, has said you need to be wearing a mask, including my own primary care physician. So, of course, I don't glory in anybody else's failures or their downfalls. So, of course, we want the president to get better, but like my dad said, something ain't clean in that milk. Honestly, and this is an open question, what do you really think about that episode of him being diagnosed with COVID, and now these few days later, claiming that he is healed, COVID free, and now immune? Right? Didn't he say he's immune?
Yes.
Yeah. What y'all think about that?
Okay, I'm gonna start first since I'm right here with you.
Go ahead, sweetheart. Go ahead.
Okay, so my thing is this. I think when you're going to be a leader, you need to lead by example, not just because I said this that you're supposed to do this. You know, everybody pays attention to what it is that you do. That being said, I don't think that wearing a mask should have become a political thing. You know, it seems like is that some Republicans feel like I don't have to wear a mask. I'm not saying all, but I've seen where, you know, people have some pushback in regards to wearing a mask. At the end of the day, everyone is supposed to wear a mask to not only protect themselves, but to protect others. That being said, to me, it comes across as the president talks to individuals or make statements or have the White House to make statements as if the people of the United States are absolutely stupid. Because you make comments, you know, when the doctors were giving a briefing to say that he was diagnosed, I'm just recalling, okay, he was diagnosed on a Thursday, but then you turn around and say that he had a COVID test and or you know, it was 72 hours, where 72 hours for, I think it may have been Friday, I think,
Saturday,
and then it said, well, 72 hours. Well, that was Wednesday, but you said that he was confirmed on this day. So it's, you know, it's just like, oops, did I say that? You know, and have the expectation that people are just going to say, I heard what you just said, you know, and then to continue to just do things that are not, I guess you could say, as the commander in chief, things should be done in decency and in order. And a lot of things have been said and or done that is not in decency and in order. And I think when you're in that leadership role as a commander in chief, you are supposed to deal with compassion and empathy. And unfortunately, he has exhibited, I would say, now I'm not a clinical psychologist or anything where I can diagnose anybody, but based off of what I see, I too would agree that he's a narcissist and everything is about himself, you know, which causes a problem.
Maybe we witnessed a miracle. What say you? It's an open question. Who want to jump on that?
What was the original question again about the
Well,
mask?
I was asking when it comes to the whole deal with our president being diagnosed with COVID-19. And now at this point, you know, his claim is that he is totally healed and even immune. What did we think about that whole episode?
Well, you know, I'm a woman of faith, so I definitely do believe Jesus will heal in the blink of an eye. I do believe that. So I don't discredit his healing per se. I mean, I have my own theories on his or the validity of him having COVID. However, what I do know is that you have people who follow him, and as a believer, that's who I'm sad for. Those who blindly follow him, those who were in his presence, who were affected. I mean, you have Herman Cain who attended a rally, and there's still, you know, speculations around if that's in fact where he got it from, but now he's in the grave. And you have Governor Christie who's fighting for his life right now. The last I heard, there was rumors he's in ICU, and he attended that White House gathering that a lot of people got affected from. So when you think about him not wearing a mask, I think when you have all of this calamity happening all around you, and you have these cases that are adding up from events that you held within the White House where no mask was being worn, to then turn around and blatantly throw your mask off as you claim you're healing, and to discredit or seemingly downgrade the experience of those who fought through COVID and had loved ones who died, one being the Broadway star wife who came out and spoke to it because she was so disrespected. She felt so disrespected after his claiming of healing, and how, again, arrogant he seemed to have fought it. And then to say any leader, and then to suggest that he purposely caught COVID to show how weak it is and how strong you can be and fight through it, and not to let it what was the word he used? Don't let it
Take over your life.
yeah, take over your life. Like, to make those type of statements, I think, again, it speaks volumes, and it really doesn't show how strong of a leader you are, but adversely how weak of a leader you are.
All right, Davi, I saw that mute button come off.
Oh, I was ready. This has gotten so interesting. I have so many points that I want to make, and the first one is, it might be a little bold, it might be a little controversial, but I don't think he had COVID. I don't think he did, because when I look at this administration, when I look at his presidency, it's an agenda and a smokescreen. It's his agenda hidden by his smokescreen. The smokescreen is saying, hey, I had COVID and I'm healed, I'm immune. You can be too, right? The agenda is he's speaking to his base, just as Mr. Terry mentioned. He's speaking to his base, to his believers that look at him and say, wow, okay, he did this, okay. I don't have to let it take over my life. I don't have to follow these guidelines. Trump didn't, so I don't have to either. Meanwhile, they could be infecting other people, but he doesn't care about that. I think it was just another stunt to get to his base. And then I'm so glad she brought up Herman Cain, because at the debate, he mentioned that about how his rallies are open, nobody's wearing masks, but nobody got hurt. Meanwhile, somebody that was supposed to be a trusted value member for him lost his life, but yet nobody got hurt, and nobody is getting hurt. And I would like to bring up something else, and this has stuck with me from the moment the words left his mouth. When asked about the death toll in America over COVID-19, his response was, it is what it is. It is what it is. The loss of American lives over the poor mishandling of this virus, it is what it is. He said that to every family member that was lost or that lost someone. He said that to every child that lost a parent as a result of COVID, every sister, every brother. Just look around your family and imagine if they had lost their life as a result of this virus. Your president, it is what it is. And just a PSA for everyone, because we also brought up the mask. This is how you properly wear a mask.
Hold on, let me zoom in on you.
Right here. Because I went outside today, and I hope you all can still hear me. I went outside today, and I saw this. Let's be clear. This is a respiratory virus, right? Respiratory is how you breathe. So if you're listening to science, you need to have a filter over both areas of where you inhale and exhale. Once again, I said if you're listening to science, not somebody who's not a doctor. If you're listening to science. So wearing your mask below your nose is not helping anything. It's just exposing something that you potentially have to other people. But if you abide by it, is what it is, and I guess you don't care about anyone else around you.
Wow. That just opened up a whole nother can. I didn't think about it from that angle. You got anything, Mr. Tucker?
Yeah, I guess I'll be the only one to say this. I think he did have COVID, or does have COVID, and not because he said it or the doctor said it. I look at everyone around him that is now, fighting COVID for themselves. For example, Chris Christie sitting in ICU, right? Who is in charge of his debate prep, who was one of 6 people in a closed room, with no social distancing going on and no mask. Chris Christie himself went on the news and said that was the case, and now he has COVID. I also think that Mike Pence has COVID, and he showed up to the vice presidential debate. Now, whether or not he tested positive and didn't disclose that or whatever, I just do not believe that the vice president of the United States, someone who has to be in such close proximity to the president, has not contracted the virus. So I believe that Trump has it. I don't think that he's out of the woods yet. And we have to remember, we don't even know what long-term effects that this has, right? We only know that as of right now, over 200 I think it's 215. The last I looked, 215,000 people have died from it. We don't know what long-term effects that this virus is going to have down the road. So, to go back to what Brother Davian said, wear your mask right. Don't be one of these people out here that's constantly putting people in danger because I don't. Just wear your mask right, please, for everybody.
I too think that he had it, but I absolutely understand where Tia and Davian are coming from, and this is the big picture that I hope people see. He has been so untrustworthy, so dishonest, that even something at this magnitude, we just can't believe it. And let me say something. I am not anti-Republican, right? I didn't even start out as anti-Trump. Now, I couldn't vote for him, but I prayed for the success of his administration because his success would have been our success, right? That's what we do in America. We go to the polls, we vote, but if the person that we vote for doesn't win, we go to have a peaceful transfer of power and we move on. That was my attitude about it, right? So the way I feel now is from an accumulation of data. And now I'm a person who does not believe that anyone is all bad or anyone is all good. I don't believe that. All of us lay somewhere on that scale, right? Now, people can say that, there have been some positive things in his administration along these years, depending on how you see things and, type of things that are important to you. But in my opinion, the way that COVID-19 has been handled and the way that the racial unrest has been handled, to me is a bridge too far. And there's a character flaw that I can't overcome. And I learned a valuable lesson. I voted for Bill Clinton in 92 and in 96. When the Monica Lewinsky thing happened, I was so angry because of the character flaw. People can say what you want to say, but when you take the power of the office of the presidency and set it against a 23-year-old young lady who you, the responsible party, had an affair with, that's a character flaw that for me is just a bridge too far. And I see the same type thing here. So that's where I am with it. There's a serious character flaw that I just cannot support. And so, speaking of the racial unrest, what role do you think that's playing? I mean, this is not new, right? For us who live in this skin, I mean, all of us have a variance of experiences, but this is not new. But something changed, not only in this nation, but in this world, when we saw what happened to Mr. Floyd in Minneapolis. But the way that not only the government has dealt with, even from the top, even from the president's office, but when we see our fellow citizens, some of our coworkers, social media has really revealed, man, there were some people that I thought I knew. And I can take somebody not agreeing with me or somebody making, off-color statements because maybe they don't understand. But real hatred has come forth. And it appears, coming from the mouth of our president, that is blatant support for white supremacy. That's what I see. It's my opinion. So the question I'm asking the panel, and I'll start with you, Tia, what effect do you think that the racial unrest is having on the way that Americans will vote in this election? And not just at the national level, at the state and local level also.
Again, I think that's going to be between COVID and racial injustice, I think, or social injustice. I think those are going to be the top two points in this election. I think that if you're someone, and this has nothing to do with color, if you're someone who just wants to live in peace, I mean, I think some people, they just want to live in peace. They don't like that civil wars are being incited for all pretense and purposes. And I think that those who are not a person of color, they don't like the fact that it's just not peaceful right now. Like everywhere you turn, you have incidents where people are just bold and blatantly disrespectful to people of color. We like to say Trumpville is bold in these. You know, we got those shirts to say we are not our ancestors and all those things because this is what's happening in our country right now. And I think that there are going to be those who don't like it. And there are going to be those who are not as vocal as we are about it, who are sitting back. Those are the ones that's going to win this election. The ones that are not, the ones that are just sitting back and intelligently making their choice because they don't want their children to inherit this. They see what's coming down the pipeline. And like someone said earlier, Trump takes this country for fools. But there are those who are sitting back and like, you know what? They may not be comfortable yet to reveal what side they're tipping on for fear of maybe, like they said, voter intimidation or fear of they may be shunned upon by their friends because you're not voting for Trump. What? You know, so there's those people who I think is a greater number than we know of. And so I think that because of everything that's happening, and I sat on the panel after George Floyd with you, and I said the same thing, you know, again, COVID, that's where we claimed the victory with COVID again, because we were all home when it happened. So I think from that point to where we find ourselves now, come November 3rd, I think that social injustice next to COVID, I think is going to play a very important role in this election. It almost seems like we have this every election. There's always something about race or discrimination or racism or something like that when it comes to every election. But this is so different just because of the level of impact it had with people being peeled to the screens.
Yeah, I would agree. I think because we were home because of COVID, so it was unavoidable. And there we go. Davian, what do you think as far as the situation with the racial unrest? What effect do you think is going to have in the 2020 election? Like I said, not just at the national level, but the state and local level also.
You know, this has been very interesting for me to look at as a millennial, as someone that's taking bigger steps out into the world and really paying more attention. I think when you're young, you don't pay as much attention to things, but as you get older, you really start to look and see these things. And when this is happening, especially when this brutality, the murders, let's call it what it is happening to people that look like you really start to take notice. And I'm glad that you all mentioned the fact of COVID also playing a part in the civil unrest. We've been home. We've been glued to our TV screens. We've been glued to our phones, anything to give us some distraction from the fact that we are home. And this civil unrest, this injustice, this racial injustice has been so widespread, we haven't been able to escape it. So if you're looking at this and you're feeling this emotion, you're looking to see that emotion mirrored by the people that are supposed to serve and protect you. And in a lot of cases, we have not seen that. So from companies, people that you watch on your phone, people that you're subscribed to, people that you vote for, especially right now, when you have not seen a response come forth in support of you, if you don't want to support the movement, that's fine. In support of you, in support of your life, it really makes you think. And I think it's created an area where, just like we said, it is not avoidable. So it's not like in the past you could say, oh, I didn't notice it, I didn't see it. No, you're hearing the response and you're realizing that it's not quite stacking up, right? There's been people and companies and celebrities and a lot of different facets that have come out in complete support. Hey, not only do we support you, but this is what we're doing. Not just, posting a slogan and saying that's fine. No, we're going to put our money where our mouth is. We're going to put our advocacy where our mouth is. We're going to help enact this change. And then there's been other people that haven't. And I think it's been a lot of people from this administration that have been silent, that want to look at the good people on both sides, if we all remember that as well. And looking at this, you have to start asking these questions, right? Because we can't escape it at this point.
All right. Thank you. Chris Tucker, what do you think about the racial unrest? What effect will it have on the election?
I think between this and COVID, I think is going to be the two defining issues of this election, as Ms. Tia stated, that this is all going to be thanks to COVID, because we no longer have the excuse of saying that we didn't see the video, we didn't see the video. What happened to Ahmaud Arbery? We didn't see, or hear about what happened to Breonna Taylor. But that now people see that when you don't vote, that these are the consequences, and this is just across the board, not just in federal elections, but we see in Kentucky that 79% of eligible Black voters did not vote in the 2016 election, and we see the consequences of that, in that Mr. Cameron is the Attorney General, and how him being the Attorney General impacted how the Breonna Taylor case was handled. So this goes more than yes, and we make a big deal about 6% of people did not vote in the 2016 general election. Okay, fine. But then when we start drilling down to these state and local elections, these things have consequences too, right? That there's more to this than just the federal piece. We have to go back to recognizing that our states and our local municipality elections have consequences too. And prime example is right there in Lexington, Kentucky.
Whew, that's amazing. And you're right. And I'm hoping people get that message. Listen, this election is not just about the president and vice president. Please make sure you're paying attention at your state and local level. All of us have congressional representatives to vote for in the House of Representatives. Those seats are up every 2 years, and many of us have senators whose seat is up for re-election right now. Also, many of you are voting at the local scene for mayor, city council, city commissioner of revenue, treasurer. My dad always says, you better know who the dog catcher is. Vote for the dog catcher. And he's put emphasis on the local level. Please go to the polls armed, and please get your election information from the right sources. And those right sources are your local government websites and social media pages, the official pages, right? The official pages. Your friends and family, they may be good source of information, but there's nothing like the official source of information. Okay. Here's something I want to.
I wanted to say something right quick before you move on from that.
Sure.
Is that okay? I wanted to say, I was thinking about this. I don't ever recall a time during a debate where racial injustice was such a main theme of the debate. Yeah. Like, I don't recall in my lifetime where they stayed on it. They stuck with it. They wanted the answer. When it came to the president debate, they wanted him to denounce white supremacy. They stayed on it. They didn't let it pass by. They stayed. They gave him an opportunity. A question that should have been just clear cut. Either you're not or you are. You're going to denounce it or you're not going to denounce it. He stumbled upon that question. He would not do it. And then to say, as your wife put, stand back and stand by. If that is not a certificate to a license to go and do whatever you want, I don't know what is. Like, I don't know how you can misconstrue that. He blatantly said it, and he would not denounce white supremacy. And then when it comes to the VP debate, they then asked Pence, and he tried everything in him. And let me just say this. I really do not think that Mike Pence agrees with everything that Trump does. I really do believe that Mike Pence is a good guy. I really do believe that. I understand the position that he's in, but he tried everything he could to try to recoup what happened with the presidential debate, and he couldn't do it. He stumbled upon it. Oh, he said several times that he denounced white supremacy. Well, if that was the case, why didn't he do it on the stage? Because they're in his pockets. So we have to call it what it is. And then when it came to the Breonna Taylor situation, again, with the vice president debate, they stuck on the subject. What is it? What is the what did you think about the Breonna Taylor decision? And he said, oh, I trust our law enforcement to do what they're supposed to do. Are you serious? Like, I've never seen it happen where all of the signs were written on the wall. And so I say that because that lets you know just how important these issues are to the election, because they hovered over it. They stayed on those, trying to get their position on it.
You're exactly right.
Tisha put something down in the comments that I was already had teed up here on my little sticky notes to address. With the whole stand back and stand by thing, let's look at the real life application of that. Right, when several guys over the weekend were caught in a plot to kidnap the governor of Michigan, right, and to overthrow the government of Michigan, the leadership there in Michigan, right? But yet we don't hear anyone coming out saying that these guys are terrorists. But we hear peaceful protesters that are saying that Black Lives Matter. They're wanting them to be labeled as a domestic terrorist organization. But what about these people who actually had a plan to kidnap a sitting governor and had several IEDs tested and scouted out and potentially in place to divert, harm, and kill law enforcement officers to keep them from responding to the plan that they had set out? But that's not terrorism, though. That's not homegrown terrorism, though. But an innocent statement, a factual statement that says Black Lives Matter is a terrorist organization in the United States of America.
DJ,
that's what stand back and stand by.
I'm coming just a minute. One thing I've been wondering, and I wasn't gonna say it, but since we're going there, I've been wondering, where's all the outrage from the same crowd that every time the news reported something about there being violence in a protest, when the numbers say that 94%, I think no, 96% of all protests in the U.S. are peaceful. So the 4% that get violence make it to the news. And I mean, we have a certain sect of people in this country that have gone bonkers, but they've been pretty quiet that I have seen when it comes to this thing that happened in Michigan. And I think that's mighty peculiar. And as far as I am concerned, it's no more than the mirror being held up. DJ, I'm going to say this. I'm going to come back to you and then I'm going to come to you, Tia. For the first couple of years of Trump's presidency, when I would listen to some of the strange things that he said, I was like, who is he talking to? And I figured out, well, he's not talking to us. He's talking to his base, right? And he's talking to the extreme wing of his base. And then there was a guy who I know, Lord knows I don't want to mention his name. He told me, he's a Caucasian fella. He told me, he said, man, I was raised down there in Alabama, and I was raised in all of that militia stuff. He said, and I'm telling you, this thing is, he said this to me 2 years ago. What's happening today, he said, it's coming. He said, those guys really do believe that the South will rise again, and Trump is their guy. He spoke their language during the primaries back in 2015, 2016, and they are waiting on him to give orders. He said, those guys are, he said, as a little boy, he began training. So he's talking about from the inside. He said once he became an adult, he realized how dumb it was and he got away from it. But he told me, he said, don't sleep on these guys. They are for real and they are convinced. So what we saw in Michigan, I really do believe that's the tip of the iceberg.
It's just the beginning.
Just the beginning. And so I think Tia asked, something about, or one of y'all said, we see it, stand by and stand back and stand by. Well, now we know a portion of who he was talking to. There it is. DJ?
This is going to be short because I really feel like it's one of those issues that don't take a lot of explanation. It's very simple. White nationalism, denounce it. White supremacy, denounce it. It's just that simple. Because even look at Black Lives Matter. When I say that, I'm saying my Black life matters. I'm talking about equality. Yes, everybody's life matters, but I'm saying specifically my life matters. What question is that? Where's the contest? The only alternatives is for you to say that my life doesn't matter, and that's a whole other topic of discussion that I don't think anybody wants to have. When we look at it, when it's white and it's dangerous, it's excusable. That's what happened with the shooter, Kyle Rittenhouse, at the Black Lives Matter protest, and that's what's happened here with this militia. And notice how they want to call them militia. They don't want to call them white nationalists. They don't want to use that term. But when it's us, just like we mentioned, it's thugs, they're criminals, they're terrorists. It's all these other words. Because when it's black and it's something lesser, even if it's a similar offense, that's terrorism. This is very simple. We're talking about our lives. We shouldn't have to fight this hard for our lives. So taking politics out of it, we're talking about human people. And when the president of the United States was asked about it, he would not push for equality. And pushing for equality is denouncing anybody that's not moving towards equality. That's just simple. This isn't trigonometry. This isn't rocket science. It's very simple. It shouldn't be a debate. It's not political. We're talking about people's lives. We're talking about equality. We're talking about the safety of everyone.
And
So
because go ahead, Tia. Go ahead.
you look at what the president of the United States, the commander in chief, is supposed to represent. You should see equality. Every word that proceeds out of his mouth should be to unify us, not to separate us. And when you can lean so far one way and not the other, that is a clear sign that you're not unifying us. If you could stand, I think it was in the art, on the graves of the military people and call them losers, you're not unifying anyone. And that has nothing to do with social injustice, but it speaks to the heart of the person that we are speaking of today. And when you have, and then I think he made an adverse comment about the soldier that was found dead in Texas. He made a comment about her. I mean, those type of things just shows you, when you look at that and you don't see a problem, yes, you have blinders on. Governor Whitmer, if she would have been anyone out in the street in plain clothes, you might not have even known that she was the governor. She was just a white woman. So this happened. This attack was against a white woman who just so happened to stand for equality, and who so happened to not settle and not be happy with what's going on in this country when it comes to social injustice. So the fact that we have a president that do not speak to these cases from a place, from his heart, a place of compassion, a place from sympathy, and comparing it to any other president that would have called the family, that would have mourned with them, that would have mentioned them, that would have done any number of things to show that they were truly cared about the people of the country. That is a problem for me. And again, we can trade Trump face for any face. We could put Carl's face on his neck. If it was him, I would be sitting here saying the same thing, because you have to have the heart of the people that you are leading. Right. And that's basic military standards. When you lead people, you have to have their best interests in mind at all times, even above your own.
Yes.
And so when we don't have that sitting in the White House, that is a problem, America. That is a problem. And it threatens all of our lives. And I know people say vote like your life depended on it. Again, a woman of faith, my life don't depend on your vote. My life depends on God's grace and his mercy, but my livelihood does. So that's what we have to think about when we talk about who we're putting in the White House. And no one is perfect. No one on any ticket is perfect. That's why they try so hard to dig out skeletons out of the closet. Like, no one is perfect. But you have to ask yourself, who is going to get us closer, as the young brother said, to equality, to unifying us so that we can live in a, and I'll say this before I move on. I'm even thinking about what other countries say about us. We look weak. And to me, what we're representing right now to the outer world, it saddens me.
Yeah, I would agree. And I'm going to come back to you, Chris. For me, and I know there are a lot of other issues. I think about my conservative friends and the issues that they bring up. And those issues have validity. Those issues mean something. But I think that right now we're in a crisis. I mean, a big time crisis. And I just don't think that the current president has what it takes. Now, then that's my opinion, right? People can agree or disagree. That's where I am. Chris Tucker.
I just wanted to kind of piggyback off of what Ms. Tia said. You know, it's you're going to be hard to find any type of message about equality coming out from this president when he still feels like the Central Park Five is still guilty, even after 30-some years, and evidence and has came out that they're innocent, and the actual guy who committed the crime came out and said that, hey, these guys are innocent. This president who took out a full-page ad calling for the death penalty for them still feels that they are guilty. So you're going to be hard pressed to find any message of unity or equality to come out of this White House. And there was Bishop Clarence McClendon went on Instagram Live and said, you know, when we talk about equality, and he specifically addressed his white brothers and sisters, he said, what we're asking is my life equal to you? In other words, is my life equal to yours in your worldview? In your mind view, is my life equal to yours? And again, when somebody takes a full-page ad out calling for the death penalty for 5 innocent people, and then after 30 years say that he still stand by a statement even though he was wrong, we can clearly see that no, our lives do not equal to him.
Amen. Well, listen, y'all, we're going to start to wrap up here. This has been a tremendous discussion, and I know that we could go another hour and 10 minutes, right? But I do respect your time. And I figured this conversation was going to be like this because there are so many issues. And I think the election just intensifies because these elections are really important. And I pray that the audience really understands the national election is very important. I don't want to downplay it at all. But let me tell you something. Especially for all of you who are with us and the fight for equality. That word equality has been tossed around in this conversation because it means something to all of us. All of us are actively in the fight. If you don't think that your local and state elections, especially at the local level, going to affect what you will see when it comes to criminal justice, will affect what you want in equality in all areas, you're sadly mistaken if you don't think so. Please take some time. We take time to do everything else. Take some time to research who the candidates are. You'd be surprised how easy it is to just go to your local county or city government website, find out when the meetings are for the school board, for the city council, for the county board of supervisors, and go to the meetings or email. You can catch the meetings virtual now. There's so many restrictions because of COVID. They Zoom and Facebook all of the meetings. So you can be a part of it. Email them, call them. Believe me, you'll be surprised at how quickly they email and call you back, especially if you let them know that you represent 2 or 3 people. Numbers mean everything to politicians. We have a saying, I think everybody on this panel knows, we have a saying up here in Northern Virginia as it pertains to our politicians, regardless of party. Work with us, because if we can't change your mind, we will change your seat. Right? So before we close out, starting with Davian, then Chris, and then Tia, I want to give everybody a chance to have final remarks. Maybe something we didn't get to, something you want to bring out before we close this episode out. We'll start with you, Davian.
I would just like to say to everyone listening, and to anyone listening and to anyone that's not listening, please share it with them. Vote. The importance of voting is something that cannot be understated. I learned the importance of voting when I was very young. And as soon as I was of legal age and able to, I voted, and I've continued to vote. Especially if you're a person of color, people have died for you to vote. People have marched, people have fought, people have been jailed, imprisoned. There's a sacrifice. Blood has been spilled for you to vote. Blood has been spilled for me to vote. For me not to vote in this election and every other election after that, I'm practically spitting on their sacrifice. And that's not something that I wanted to do. And I hope that's not something that you'll want to do as well, especially as a person of color. Voting is different for us. And if you choose not to, I'd like to pitch in with my own saying. And I know, Dad, we've gone back and forth and agreeing about the same thing. If you're complaining about the state of this country, whether it's the president or the criminal justice system in your local vicinity, and you're not voting, I don't want to hear it. Because at that point, you're a part of the problem. You're a part of the hundreds of thousands of Americans that did not vote, that led to the state of this country, that led to Trump being in office, that led to Cameron with the Breonna Taylor decision. You're part of the problem because you were not part of the solution. Voting makes you part of the solution, not part of the problem. Please vote, especially as a person of color. Please vote.
Thank you. And Chris, just before you come in, I want to add it in because I'm getting old now. Forget it. Not just voting, but being involved with your community and your elected officials in between the votes. If you just vote and leave it up to them to make all the decisions, it's a dereliction of duty. Show up, speak up, and be a part of the change that you want to see. Chris Tucker.
As always, it's always good to be on here. Always good to be on here with such intelligent people. I would say more intelligent than myself, and definitely more articulate. Ladies and gentlemen, again, as Brother Donnie said, as Sister Tia said, as everybody said, voting is your civic duty, right? 60% of people voted in the general election, and for good or bad, it cost you something. 79% of eligible Black voters in Kentucky did not vote, and that cost us something, right? Going in every election, your vote absolutely counts, and it's up to you to still your nerves, ignore the noise, ignore they're throwing ballots in the river and they're selling it. Ignore that because it's not true. Yes, that there are going to be attempts to suppress the vote, to intimidate you as a voter. Don't fall for it. Do not fall for it. And one thing we didn't get a chance to bring out, Donald Trump was able to nominate now 3 Supreme Court justices. Well, guess what? Justice Stephen Breyer is 82. 82. Ruth Bader Ginsburg passed, unfortunately, at 87. Imagine what would happen if you did not vote and Donald Trump got reelected, and for whatever reason, Stephen Breyer passed. Stephen Breyer is 82. So please, all of this interlinks with each other. You have a responsibility, federal, state, local levels. Get involved.
Thank you, sir. Miss Tia.
So yes, my good brothers have already stated the importance of voting. So I will save my time on that. 23 days from November 3rd. I think that at this point, we all should know the importance of voting. So I will leave you with this. It's a popular saying by Martin Luther King: injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. This president has managed to threaten justice on multiple platforms: financial injustice, medical injustice, relations with other countries, with his handling of China and the things that he says about China and Korea, all of the arrogant statements, all of the insults that he's launched that way. So he's managed to threaten justice across the board. And like I said before, this is the one election that I can recall where everyone is touched in a negative way. If you have pre-existing conditions, if you have medical concerns, if you dealt with COVID or a family member did, this affects you. If you are struggling financially due to COVID, this affects you. If you are a person of color in this country, this affects you. If you are a foreigner in this country, this affects you. So this affects us across the board. So think intelligently. Don't vote just based on your party line. Let your mind prevail. Do your research and just think about what you want your kids to inherit within the next 4 years at least. Education and justice. I mean, again, it's across multiple platforms. So just think about that. Do your research, vote intelligently, but whatever you do, just vote.
I would like to mirror that. Please take the time to vote. As everyone indicated, it is your duty. That being said, I lost my train of thought. And I'll tell you, I should have said something because I'm getting old too.
Well, I'll step in and help you out. Tia said something earlier that I'm going to hold on to, and it's not new to me. But Tia, I'm gonna thank you ahead of time because you brought this out, and I think it to be vitally important. I too am neither Republican nor Democrat.
Mm-hmm.
I'm fiercely independent and fiercely Carl Armstrong. I think it would do us well as people of color to withdraw from the parties and make them compete for our vote. It matters not to me the designation of their party. It matters not to me how they identify themselves as a liberal or conservative or moderate. I pay those things no mind. Because one thing I do know, politicians are not known to be honest, right? And when you deal with somebody where you can't really judge their level of honesty, then you pay no attention to what they say and you listen and you look at what they do. Their track record is very important. And I think that many of us, if we would withdraw from the political ideologies and just look at candidates and issues from a point of view, how does this reckon with me? How does it reckon with my lifestyle? How does it reckon with my family, with our needs, with the needs of the nation? Regardless of what party. That's where we're going to start making a difference. So yes, it is important to vote, but please don't walk into the polls because you are a Democrat, because you are a Republican, and just vote down the ticket on the party line just because, and you walk out as ignorant as you were when you walked in. Now, this is America, and we have a right to be ignorant if that's what we choose. But I think that we can do better, and I really want to see us do better. Did you get your thought back?
Yes, I did.
Wonderful.
Okay, so now that I remember, as you just indicated, you want to vote in a president that speaks to what it is that you believe in. And then you also want to have a president that is going to be a leader that surrounds himself with individuals. Again, no person is perfect. And, you know, you might not always get things right, but you want to have yourself around individuals that can tell you when you're doing something wrong and you're not intentionally misleading people, because as we see, it can cost people their life. So, to have leadership, individual that can be compassionate, it's so much division. We need a person that is going to come in to bring togetherness. We have to work together, all races, across the board, across the world, because what happens here in the United States affects the world. And there has been so much division and just a whole lot of foolishness to really sum it all together. We need to get down to the basics. Do unto others as you would have them to do unto you. That's the best way. And we have to come together. It's not about black or white. It's everyone coming together. There's been so much divisiveness. We have to get back to the basics and continue to help each other as individuals. But we've gotten to a place now, Everybody just kind of looking, are you a Democrat? Are you a Republican? Are you this? Are you that? And it shouldn't be about the party lines. It's what best, works for you. And we can be respectful of each other. We may disagree, but you need understanding. And I think we all need each other. And we just need a president that is a leader that can lead by example and, take constructive criticism and make the necessary changes in the period of 4 years.
Amen to that. Listen, I want to thank each and every one of you. You took time out of your schedule today. There were some interesting things that happened to the original panel. But let me tell you, y'all, I have some friends and some people who care about Carl's Conversations because they came right in. A special thank you to Tia, because we had a mix up the last time that I invited her. And I felt so bad. And then I thought she was ignoring me. But she just as busy as I am. But she was, oh, man. I was like, I said, Tisha, I think she is mad with me, but I didn't mean it. So I really do appreciate you taking your time. And listen, I want to say to the audience, if you have been enriched by this episode of Carl's Conversations, please go to your social media platform and share it. Tell somebody about it. We send notifications when we're going to go live. This week, I've already got something lined up for Tuesday night for Heart for the Community Initiative, and there'll be some more things coming. Carl's Conversations are going to continue. As long as there are difficult subjects, then there will be a Carl's Conversations to be a safe place for that discussion. So we thank God for you. Please help spread the word. We want to be a part of your community and an outlet for you to have a safe place to have difficult conversations. So until next time, we say thank you to the panel. You're awesome. Thank you to the audience. You are awesomer. Until next time, may God bless you and may heaven smile upon you. Bye-bye.